Welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name is Don Preziosi, and I am your Sunday associate this morning. We are a spiritually alive, radically inclusive, and justice-centered community. We are so glad you are here with us, whether you're in the room with me, or on our website, or on YouTube, or Facebook. Welcome. We have some announcements. Next week, Sunday, March 6th, we'll host an Odyssey presentation featuring Marcia Ivan's life story, poetry, and wisdom. Join us in our sanctuary or on Zoom at 1 p.m. We'll provide refreshments between the second service and the Odyssey presentation. Parents of children in grades 1 and 2 and 4 and 5 are invited to sign up for Our Whole Lives. That's OWL, as we refer to it, which presents honest, accurate information about sexuality. OWL dismantles stereotypes and assumptions, builds self-acceptance and self-esteem, fosters healthy relationships, improves decision-making, and has the potential to save lives. Classes are taught by trained facilitators starting on March 13th. There is also a parent meeting after the service on March 6th. Go to muuf.org/owl for more information. If you have questions, contact Nick Woolwork at dre@muuf.org. Today at 1 p.m., all of our members are encouraged to attend the Zoom-only congregational meeting to vote on our strategic plan. The link was sent out to every member via Constant Contact and via Realm and via our Facebook page events. We need a quorum, so please attend if you can. It will be a short meeting, maybe 30 to 40 minutes. We hope you can make it. Finally, our collection today is split 50% between our fellowship's general fund and 50% to the Morris County Interfaith Food Pantry Network. We invite you to give generously via text, via our website, www.muuf.org, or via cash in your basket, or checks in the basket, or you can mail checks in as well. You can run here, jog here, drive here, and bring your checks. Once again, welcome to newcomers and long-timers alike. We are so glad you are here.
And now I invite you to join me in reciting the covenant, the words by James Villa Blake, our unison reading as we light our chalice. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And I invite you to look at the words on the screen behind me, or to open the gray hymnal to number 444. And Don and I are going to share in our responsive reading. So I invite those on Don's side of the room to join with him with the first line, and then we'll read the italicized version together.
This house is for the ingathering of nature and human nature.
It is a house of friendships, a haven in trouble, an open room for the encouragement of struggle.
It is a house of freedom, guarding the dignity and worth of every person.
It offers a platform for the free voice, for declaring, both in times of security and danger, the full and undivided conflict of opinion.
It is a house of truth-seeking, where scientists can encourage devotion to their quest, where mystics can abide in a community of searches.
It is a house of art, adorning its celebrations with melodies and handiworks.
It is a house of prophecy, outrunning times past and present in visions of growth and progress.
This house is a cradle for our dreams, the workshop of our common endeavor. And I'll mention today, we are talking about our dreams for the fellowship and the future with our strategic plans on the near horizon and a vote in just a little bit. And now will you rise in body or spirit, and we will sing or hum The Fire of Commitment by Jason Shelton, 1028, and Stearns will lead us. And I'll join you singing behind my mask and stand far away from
Cool.
you. Okay.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. Stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful visions comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
All right, there we go. So what do you want to be when you grow up? It's a question I asked the kids before, but there's no kids in here. So what do you, grown-ups, want to be when you grow up?
A mommy.
A mommy? All right. You never want to grow up. I love that. I asked the kids today, and they said things like a veterinarian. One kid said a school counselor, which I thought was very specific. Another kid said they wanted to be a home designer and renovator, as if they've been watching a lot of HGTV during the pandemic. They said a lot of things, but they were all very quick to come up with what they wanted to be when they grew up. Scientists was another one. I then asked them, and I'll ask you this, who do you want to be when you grow up? Who? What kind of person do you want to be when you grow up? Compassionate. There you go. Good person. Yeah. They said that stuff. And so the reason I was asking them this, and the reason I asked you this, because we all are growing still and want to be something as we grow up, who we want to grow up, is that we want to talk about what religious education for me and for the fellowship means specifically, right? I come from a Christian background, and Sunday school in that form meant knowing the Bible and knowing Jesus. Well, one of the things I love about Unitarian Universalism is that it opens what we learn in our children's and adults' RE to so much more, a deeper understanding of life. But there are still these core tenets, these core things that we want to be when we grow up. Be good, compassionate, all of those things. And that's the point of RE here. For our children, teach them how to be good people, good children, good classmates. Learn to share, those kind of things. But our religious education experience isn't just for children or for youth. It's lifespan, right? That means from babies all the way through all of you. One of the things that I think is really great about the fellowship is that we continue to have discussions about how we can better serve our communities and our world. What ways we can build towards justice, as we just talked about a little bit in there, towards a more loving and compassionate and welcoming world. I love that about our RE programs here. I hope that all of you will find a place outside of this morning worship, and morning worship is super important. I don't want to, sorry Alison Stearns, I'm not trying to knock you at all, but I hope you will also find a place in our religious education program. And if there is not a place that you feel that is serving you, and you want to lead something, please tell me. I want more classes and groups and circles. Alison's going to talk about the history of all this soon. But our religious education program is not just for our children, but it's for each and every one of you adults. So there we go. We're now, I guess, going to collect the offering.
And I'll just remind people that our offering today is going to be split 50-50 with the fellowship and the interfaith food pantry. So thank you for your generosity. I have a poem to share this morning called Liminality, and it is written by the poet and songwriter Carrie Newcomer. So much of what we know lives just below the surface. Half of a tree spreads out beneath our feet, living simultaneously in two worlds, each half informing and nurturing the whole. A tree is neither and either, but mostly both. I am drawn to liminal spaces, the half-tamed and unruly patch where the forest gives way and my little garden begins, where water and air and light overlap, becoming mist on a pond. I like to sit on my porch steps, barn jacket and boots, in the last long exhale of the day. It's a very important poem because it also has a soundtrack. It's okay. For folks online, if you didn't hear, there was a silence your phones moment. I like to sit on my porch steps, barn jacket and boots, in the last long exhale of the day, when bats and birds loop in and then out, one rising to work, one readying for sleep. And although the full moon calls the currents and the dark moon reminds me that my best language has always emerged out of silence, it is in the waxing and waning where I most often live, neither here nor there, but simply on the way. There are endings and beginnings, one emerging out of the other, but most days I travel in an ever-present and curious now. A betwixt and between that is almost, but not quite, the beautiful, but not yet. I've been learning to live with what is, more patient with the process, to love what is becoming, and the questions that keep returning. I am learning to trust the horizon I walk toward is an orientation, not a destination, and that I will keep catching glimpses of something great and luminous from the corner of my eye. I am learning to live where losses hold fast and grief lets loose and unravels, where a new kind of knowing can pick up the thread, where I can slide palms with paradox and nod at the dawn as the shadows pull back and spirit meets bone. Let us open our hearts to hear the milestones that have happened in the lives of our fellow congregants since we last met. From Howard Hasman, a concern. My best friend, Ed, is married to Gigi, who is from Ecuador. I attended their wedding in 2005. Gigi's father, who is in his 80s, appears near death. He's being given medication and is due to receive a pacemaker in a couple of days and may not make it. His name is Vincenzo Aviles. Ed and Gigi are leaving ASAP to be with him and their family, and Ed just phoned me and asked that we here at the fellowship pray for him. Let us hold Vincenzo and his family in our hearts. May he receive the care that he needs and find the strength to heal. And we surround his family with prayers in this difficult time. I shared a significant milestone last week, and I just want to bring it into the space because I know people may be holding Ilya Evans in their hearts. Last week, I shared the news that Ilya Evans, who grew up at the fellowship, beloved member Carolyn Evans' son, was riding a scooter with a helmet on when he was struck by a car. And he has been in a coma since, and there has been no change. I have been on the phone with Carolyn and Bob this week, Ilya's father, and I want you to know she has shared what a difference your prayers and your messages on Caring Bridge have made. She knows that we are with her, and your presence is bringing the light of love. So may we continue to surround Ilya and Carolyn and Bob with all of our love in this challenging time. And we'll continue to share updates with you as they come. We have had a significant milestone around our globe as Russia invaded Ukraine. I have invited Don Preziosi to share a prayer that comes from the Ukrainian tradition, and then we're going to light 3 candles together before we move into our song, Just as Long as We Have Breath. I invite you into this time of prayer and reflection.
Prayer for Ukraine is a patriotic Ukrainian hymn and anthem. The text was written by Alexandra Koniski, and the music was composed by Mykola Lysenko, published in 1885, first with a children's choir in mind. The song became the regular closing hymn in the services of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, and other churches. It also closes city council meetings and is sung on anniversaries of Ukraine's independence and other celebrations and events. Last night, the Ukrainian chorus Dumka of New York performed the hymn in the cold open of Saturday Night Live, standing behind a table of candles that spelled Kyiv, or Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. The following is a literary translation by Dmytro Shostak. Lord, O the great and mighty, protect our beloved Ukraine. Bless her with freedom and light of your holy rays. With learning and knowledge enlighten us, your children small. In love pure and everlasting, let us, O Lord, grow. We pray, O Lord, my Almighty, protect our beloved Ukraine. Grant your people and country all your kindness and grace. Bless us with freedom. Bless us with wisdom. Guide into a kind world. Bless us, O Lord, with good fortune forever and evermore.
Amen. And now we're going to share the light of our chalice, which is a symbol born of the Second World War from the Unitarians' work to rescue children and adults from the Nazis. May the light of service, of sacrifice, and of one world unite our hearts with the people of Ukraine. We light our first candle for the people. May they be brought well springs of strength and courage and grit. May all the ordinary citizens, the youth and the elders, and everyone in every age in between who find themselves having to defend their homeland and conscripted into the front lines, be met with the light of courage and strength. And may every family who has lost a loved one be brought comfort and the healing of community. May their words, especially the words of their president, call forth allies from the global community to show up for and with them. And may his words point the way towards greater peace and greater understanding. We light our second candle for the light of democracy. Today, for the democracy in Ukraine, but for democracies all around the globe. We know how it is too easy without tending a democracy to move into the shadows of a dictatorship, to the shadows of autocracy, fascism, and tyranny. May all of us do our part to preserve and to tend the light of democracy for the future. And a final candle for peace. We Unitarian Universalists proclaim that peace by peaceful means is always the best course forward. And yet, we also acknowledge the right for people to defend their homeland when they are being attacked. We pray for peace. We act for the preservation of democracy and the lives of people. And we will continue to work together to find out ways that we might be of service. Amen. And may it be so. Will you rise in body or in spirit and let us hum along with Stearns? The song is just as long as I have breath, and the words are on the screen.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
We are at a milestone moment today in the history of our fellowship. Following this service at 1 o'clock on Zoom, members will be joining together to vote on our next strategic plan. We are moving through a threshold time in the life of our fellowship and in the religious landscape in the world more broadly. It is a liminal time, an in-between time. There is who we were before the pandemic and who we are now becoming that we don't yet quite fully understand. We were already a very regional congregation, drawing members from around Morris County and a bit beyond before the pandemic. And from what I've gathered from knowing other congregations in the Morristown and Township area where we're located, that's not the case with every other congregation. And now, with the advent of multi-platform worship and other ministries, we have people here in our sanctuary, right there in our virtual sanctuary. We are expanding the doorways people can move through to join us. You can join us for worship from Morristown or Massachusetts, from New Jersey or Japan, on Sunday morning or on Wednesday night, if you wish. We will also be breaking ground on our new edition next year in 2023, which will greatly expand our accessibility in other ways. That edition, with the Al and Minda Chu Family Fellowship Hall, the Wilson Family Welcome Gallery, the new outdoor courtyard, the 2 classrooms, and the modern kitchen or hospitality center, and multiple bathroom facilities will be built with people along the mobility continuum in mind. And we've also had a dynamic conversation about the gender continuum through a class that many of you may have participated in or will have the opportunity to participate in, called Trans Inclusion, and looking at how we welcome. And that experience allowed leaders to make some significant changes around the designs for our bathroom facilities. We are expanding the definition of who we are and who we are becoming in so many ways. All of this is rooted in the strategic planning that many of us did together in the last decade, from 2010 and beyond, and the strategic planning that we've been doing together so far in this decade, from 2020 and moving forward. Today at 1 p.m., again, every member is invited to join us on a Zoom meeting to vote on that strategic plan for 2022 to 2027 that will help frame our collective work. And whether you are a member or a newcomer or someone who is coming back, please know that while voting is a privilege of membership, and you can join by meeting with me and signing our membership book whenever you're ready, we will need all of us, members and friends, long-timers and newcomers alike, to continue to dream and to fulfill those dreams and plans. It is our collective time, talent, and treasure that will help us to move through this threshold moment to what we see emerging in the mists on the horizon. And I see a bright light that we are following. On a day like today, it is helpful to remember that there was a time before we even existed, and to draw strength from our founders who saw a future with Unitarian Universalism thriving in Morris County when there were no Unitarian Universalist communities here. Here is their story, and in the context of our wider denomination's story. Nearly 75 years ago, in 1948, the Unitarian Universalist Association embarked on a daring and unusual project to help spread the gospel, that is to say, the good news of liberal religion. The project was called the Fellowship Movement, and it is where our name, the Morristown UU Fellowship, comes from. As with much of recent U.S. history, this story is somewhat linked with the advent of the baby boomers and the surrounding events going on in our country. Baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. At that time, our population, and Unitarian Universalists in particular, were moving away from the Northeast, the home of Unitarian Universalism, to the South, the West, and the Midwest. And I'll just point out, Unitarian Universalist headquarters is in Boston. So even though we might not think of ourselves this way, we're the South. This is already the South. The population had also gained greater access to a college education, and with exposure to new ideas came more liberal attitudes about the world religions and other sources of wisdom, like the sciences and the humanities that we treasure as a part of our spiritual life. The explosion of numbers of children meant that many parents were interested in a religious education program that fit with their changing understanding of religion. The American Unitarian Association, later the Unitarian Universalist Association, hoped to figure out a way to share our faith in these places of burgeoning populations. And at the same time, Unitarians who relocated were interested in finding a religious organization in their new hometown. The conundrum was that there were very limited resources to make this happen. The traditional way of starting a new congregation was for the headquarters to heavily subsidize the congregation, beginning by helping to pay the salary of the minister as well as financially supporting other programs. This limited new starts to locations where they were assured a promising return on their significant investment, and limited new congregations to a very small number each year. Not to mention, we happened to be experiencing a low tide in terms of the number of clergy at that time, and that also limited the possibilities. 3 creative and out-of-the-box individuals came up with a whole new way of starting a congregation. Frederick May Elliott, president of the American Unitarian Association, Reverend Lon Ray Call, an AUA minister at large, and Monroe Husbands, a lay leader and the only person to serve as the director of the fellowship program, proposed a new idea. Wherever there were 10 or more religious liberals living in a community where there wasn't a Unitarian church, they were all called churches up to that moment, they could become a Unitarian fellowship when they expressed agreement with the principles and purposes of the association and paid dues. In exchange, these new fellowships would be allowed to send a delegate to our General Assembly and would gain both support and resources from that fellowship office. This opened up the possibility of our liberal way of doing religion in small towns, suburbs, and more distant locations than was previously possible. More than that, it changed the way that we do religion. It turned it into an even more expansive understanding of shared ministry. The hope was that these fellowships would grow and ultimately be able to launch a religious education program, to purchase a building, to call a minister, and to hire other staff. Many of the fellowships never did realize that dream, and to this day remain small. Many ultimately closed. Many, however, did realize that very dream and are among some of the most thriving congregations in our association. Just imagine how many religions would trust that a small group of lay leaders without a trained minister could launch a congregation to meet the spiritual, ethical, educational, and community needs of a growing spiritual home. Well, the fact that many did not survive proves that it was no easy task. And the fact that many did proves that it is most definitely possible. We need to take time to honor the role that Monroe husbands in particular played in the fellowship movement. He was like the Johnny Appleseed of Unitarianism, planting congregations here and fro. He crisscrossed the country many times between the year of 1948 and 1967, meeting with small groups of people interested in Unitarian Universalism, and helped generate and offer the tools to open their doors as a religious institution. It was husbands who helped us get started too. There were a couple of parents at the Unitarian Church of Summit who were interested in creating a congregation closer to their homes and further west. Yes, we're south and west. You might not have known that, but according to south and west from the Unitarian orientation. Eleanor Mason and Marshall and Judy Deutsch will be familiar names to some of you. And two things happened next. They called up Monroe husbands and got a list of others who were Unitarians in the area and had expressed interest. They placed advertisements created by the UU Laymen's League in the local newspapers. And many older Unitarian Universalists, and I know some maybe here, might remember the simple and effective slogans that appeared. Are you a Unitarian and don't know it? I know there's some people remember. When enough people had been contacted, Monroe husbands came for a public meeting with a group of 60 people in a bank down by the square on South Street. He explained a bit about our faith tradition and how to start a new congregation. At the end of that meeting, Monroe husbands asked for 6 volunteers to draft tentative bylaws and to become the first steering committee. And that first steering committee found a place to meet at the old YMCA downtown by the courthouse. The Morristown Unitarian Fellowship opened very soon, with Sunday school classes in the morning and worship services in the evening, conducted by guest ministers, guest lecturers, and lay leaders. From the get-go, we made 2 important decisions. Many of the fellowships that didn't survive decided to meet in a private place, like someone's home, and remained insular. Also, the fellowships that thrived were very intentional about creating religious education classes for children and were interested in tending the next generation. This congregation did not wait and set that up from the very beginning, meeting in a public space, and our religious education program for children and youth opened on day 1. A couple of years into our history, one member, Charlene Catula, saw a mansion for sale on Normandy Heights Road. And right there on the spot, she gave the down payment, confident that she had viewed the right home for us to grow into. For the newcomers that are here, I'll just mention that's not how we conduct business anymore. If we have a really big idea, we share it with other people and get their buy-in and join in before we just go ahead and do it. But still, I appreciate her persistence and her vision, and we're grateful for it. 26 7 individuals voted to go for it and decided to dedicate this as our spiritual home. A few people did disagree and leave. There was a bit of a debate. But I applaud the courage that the 27 displayed by taking on a mortgage and the care of one another into the future and the care of this physical space. At that time, we held services in the terrace room, which would be the case for many years to come. In 1962, the congregation reached 100 members and decided to call its first minister, the Reverend Charles Reinhardt. Whether or not to call a minister was also the subject of some debate. But again, the congregation boldly moved down the path of realizing and working for that dream. In an old article I found, I read that the congregation initially intended to change its name to a church when it reached that point, 100 members and a minister. But as so often happens, our name becomes core to our identity, and changing it must be a thoughtful and considered decision. And what is more, we always had a vision of religious pluralism here. And so there was a decision that the word church was too limiting and did not define who we were. The congregants decided to continue forward with that name of fellowship, linking us to the legacy of that movement within Unitarian Universalism and claiming our broader connections to other wisdom traditions, as well as the arts, sciences, and humanities. The fellowship movement planted somewhere between 600 to 800 lay-led communities between 1948 and 1967. About 300 of those communities survive to this day, and they account for about 30% of all Unitarian Universalist congregations, and about 30% in terms of our membership numbers. The Morristown UU Fellowship has made its imprint on both the UUA and on our home in Morris County. We have grown in spirit. We are a community that has served thousands of children and youth and adults longing for the diverse spiritual experiences. In the last few months, and every month before that, going back to 1955, people show up on our doorstep, interfaith families, people who follow multiple spiritual paths and want to find a home where that's welcome. People who assert that human reason must be centered alongside faith, and for the growing number of people who claim identities like spiritual but not religious. We have offered religious education, classes, worship, spiritual practices. We have been here with those folks, once newcomers, now longtime members, through joyful and harrowing times. We practice showing up for one another to co-create opportunities for resilience, for renewal, and inspiration. We have grown in impact. We have been partners with Morristown and the township where we're located, as well as the wider county and country and globe on pressing matters of justice and liberation at the time. Our second minister, Clark Olsen, was chair of the advisory council to the Morris School District as they sought to integrate the schools. And Stephen Wiley, one of the first to join our fellowship, was a lawyer who advocated for integration in the landmark case that happened here. And many of our lay leaders were the parents who showed up to say, yes, separate is not equal. We have to do better. We have been partners with the Gay Activist Alliance, who started meeting here 50 years ago in 1972, working together for a Morris County and a Unitarian Universalism that is truly open and inclusive of the LGBTQIA plus community. The first commitment ceremonies. And during my time here, some of the first legal civil unions and then same-gender marriages have happened right here in this room, right there on that sacred ground. We have been partners with other faith institutions in launching many of the nonprofits addressing homelessness and hunger, such as Homeless Solutions and the Community Soup Kitchen and Family Promise. And I'm going to leave some names out. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list of our plethora of partners, many of whom we've co-founded or followed their lead. We also partner with organizations like Neighborhood House and Wind of the Spirit to ensure that the waves of immigrants who make up our communities are received with dignity and with the support that they need to thrive. We have grown in community. We are now over 300 members, one of the largest fellowships in the UUA. There are a couple that are over 500. About half of the fellowships today have 100 members or less, and about half are over 100. The ones that are over 100, the average is in the 220s, maybe the 230s. As we have welcomed new people, we have planted many, many small group opportunities to get to know one another more deeply. So many come here craving community, not just numbers of people, but quality of relationship. And I'll invoke our men's groups, our women's groups, our community circles, our covenant circles, our spiritual practice groups, our compassionate communication groups. I could go on, and in my heart is the women's group that Carolyn Evans is a part of, who has been surrounding her with their love. And our footprint continues to grow. The sanctuary was added in 1969, additional classrooms in the 1980s, and recently all the outdoor play spaces and gathering spaces and the expanded parking lot. What is next? I hope that we pass the strategic plan today and move towards what building spirit, community, and impact means for tomorrow, even as the horizon is somewhat misty in this shifting landscape. There are things we can see from here, and I'll share the 6 areas of the strategic plan, and we'll be talking more about what falls under each. 1, expanding community and congregational involvement. 2, enhancing and expanding socially responsible activities and service. 3, improving organization systems. We used to pride ourselves on being a disorganized religion because we said we weren't like organized religions, and then we realized actually being organized is something to aspire to, and what we meant was an open-minded religion. 4, strengthening and expanding our lifespan learning program. 5, creating effective outreach and publicity. And 6, improving the financial health and physical home of our congregation. So here are just a few ways this might manifest and will be manifesting, as well as the ways that are burbling up in your heart and on those plans that so many of you participated in creating. 1, the roof. Finally, within months, we're going to fix our roof. We're actually going to replace the entire roof. The very first week I showed up here in 2005, people started making appointments with me, telling me that the roof was going to fall in by the end of my first year, and I better figure out what to do about it. And as if that wasn't enough forewarning, tiles on the roof would literally fall down on the ground, and people would bring them into my office. Every day I said a daily prayer. May tiles not fall on anyone's head. Well, finally, supply chain stuff, may it all work out. We'll have a whole new roof, maybe as soon as next September. 2, that beautiful addition, which is going to open us up in terms of accessibility, in terms of being green, and in terms of community building, and so many wonderful things. 3, we are so proud of our legacy being on the forefront of LGBTQIA issues, and we have a right to be proud of that history. But we became a welcoming congregation in 1990, one of the first in the country. And between 1990 and 2022, a lot has changed, and we have more work to do. And so we're going to be pursuing the welcoming congregation renewal as a part of our commitment to the new 8th principle, which is very exciting. And if you're interested, you can speak with Judy Romano, who's with us this morning. 4, equip ourselves to be a multi-platform community, and looking at how the generations after me, I'm Gen X, above me is those boomers. We have below those, we also have the rising millennials who are, don't tell them, not as young as they used to be, and then Gen Z right below them. So what do they want, and how can we reach them? 5, a publicity campaign opened our doors in the first place. What would that look like today? 6, adapt our property and our social justice efforts to address climate justice. Again, we may go for a green sanctuary renewal. And 7, we opened as a liberal religion, but today that commitment looks like liberation. What does it look like to be committed to collective liberation around matters of race, gender, sexual orientation, and the like? 8, it's about all of you. How do we help connect or reconnect people to leadership and the shaping of our ministries of caring, justice, and worship, of religious education and community building? Our congregation belongs to each and every one of you in this room and online, today, Sunday, and Wednesday night. And it also belongs to the newcomers and the leaders of tomorrow. George K. Beach asserts, people do not join a covenanted community, rather they constitute it. There is no it without them. And each time new folks join, the whole is literally reconstituted. Remember that what is written in the plan is not a recipe, but rather directional, and that it will take all of us to fulfill and adapt as we learn along the way. A couple of years into our last plan, we were identified as a threshold congregation in the UUA, a community that was capable of new growth for our faith. Let us then move towards yet another threshold now together, a threshold made of the shifting time that we are living through and made of the dreams that we set before us in our planning. In the end, may all of our efforts lead to Unitarian Universalism thriving in Morris County and beyond. Why? Because ours is a community that has the power to heal, to liberate, and to move us forward in the direction of love. May it be so. And yes, and will you join with me in our closing song, 114, Forward Through the Ages, and the words are on the screen.
Forward through the ages in unbroken line, move the faith won the sure reward. Forward through the ages in unbroken line, move the faithful spirits at the call divine. Wider grows the vision, realm of love and light. For it we must labor till our faith is sight. Prophets have proclaimed it, martyrs testified, poets sung its glory, heroes for it died. Forward through the ages in unbroken line, move the faithful spirits at the call divine. Not alone we conquer, not alone we fall. In each loss or triumph, lose or triumph fall. Bound by God's far purpose, in one living whole, move we on together to the shining goal. Forward through the ages in unbroken line, move the faithful spirits at the call divine.
And I'll just mention, I hear that song has different words in the Christian tradition. I'm a lifelong Unitarian Universalist. I've never heard that song. Although Beth Wilson did text me the words during the service, so I'll have to go read them afterwards. But I gather they have a different direction, a different horizon.
Guy named Jesus in them. Yeah.
There's that too. They're a little more worrying too.
Can I share the other fun fact about that hymn?
Yes, please do.
Does anyone know who wrote the music to that hymn? Arthur Sullivan of Gilbert and Sullivan, who wrote Pirates of Penzance and The Mikado and all of the lovely operettas that you know him on.
It's why it has such a, I can sort of, I feel like I'm the captain of the pinafore.
It's a bit piratey, isn't it?
It is, I agree. It's a beautiful melody.
I love it.
And our closing words are by Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. So go forth and dream, friends. Go forth and do the wise planting. May it burst into flower and fruit that nourishes the generations ahead. Go with peace. Go with joy. And know you are blessed, and share that blessing with the world.